welcome everyone. My name is Manoj Agrawal. I'm with Banking Frontiers as the group editor and moderating a panel discussion today on operations about the nouveau normal. The nouveau normal is new normal. The nouveau is a French word for new. And we have five panelists with me, and we're going to have a fantastic discussion. Let's have an introduction of our panelists. Let's start with Mahindra.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mahinder Chavla, and I head operations for Fincare Small Finance Bank.
Thank you, Mahindra. Welcome. Can we have Ashish's introduction?
Hi, Manoj. Thank you so much for having me on the panel. It's great to be here with the rest of the panelists. My name is Ashish Ahuja, and I'm the Chief Operations Officer for Fino Payments Bank.
Thank you, Ashish. Harish, can we have your introduction?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me here. So I take care of the transformation for the bank and love to interact with this esteemed panel.
Thank you. You're welcome. And Gulsharan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gulsharan Rai Bansal. I am head of sales, marketing, and distribution for India Post Payments Bank. Been part of the initial startup team and have been with the bank for almost quarter to 4 years. And it's been an exciting journey, and really looking forward to have a insightful and interesting discussion with all the fellow panelists.
Yes, thank you, Gulsharan. Mahesh, can we have your introduction?
Absolutely. Thank you, Manoj, for having all of us here. A great panel to interact with. My name is Mahesh Hariharan. I actually lead the financial services business for Blue Prism for India, South Asia. Blue Prism is the leader in intelligent automation space, and we are headquartered out of London. So that's the quick introduction. Thank you.
Yes. So thank you and welcome everyone. Let's start our discussion without any fuss. My first question is simply this. What are the main changes in your business strategy post-COVID? And how are you aligning the business operations with those new strategies? If you could just share the highlights of that, that would be good. Who would like to begin with the very first question? Ashish, yes, please go ahead. Please unmute.
The way I would look at it, say, internally in the bank, we no longer call it COVID. COVID stands for creating opportunities in virus-infected days. That's the acronym we've coined for ourselves. And the way I look at it is that, you have to stick with your basic model. Fact is that COVID has created new opportunities. It's given an imperativeness to non-face-to-face kind of developments. And coming from an operations standpoint, if I was to look at it from these, the topic that we're basically discussing, I would say the operations team is no longer a back-end team. It is core central to your business function. And it is something that needs to be tightly ingrained along with technology and needs to understand the consumer needs. Because if it doesn't, your consumer deliveries, your service delivery is going to get really, impacted, because any back-end function needs to be tightly ingrained with that. So that's the way I would look at operations from this standpoint. Having said that, our approach is phygital, which is a mix of access points being physical, but all the processes being digital. Back to you, Manoj.
Okay, Ashish, thank you for that introductory comments. Who would like to supplement that with some other insights?
So
Gulsharan, please.
Yeah, Gulsharan.
Okay, I would like to start by saying that, once Winston Churchill, he had said that, never waste a good crisis. In fact, in our world, typically, as Ashish has also mentioned, that, ours being more of a digital-oriented bank. And in fact, right from the very beginning, our thread or the basic fundamental of our bank's existence has been digital. So even all the processes are backed by 100% digital model, and that too, added with the mobility. So typically, you will find that our model is based on, a person having a digital process, and he is also mobile, and he's providing the service at the doorstep, as well as away from his even access point or a post office or, doing the hand holding, for all the customers, etc., and teaching them also, and to do their self service, etc. So all this is 100% opportunity for us. And typically, if you look at our numbers also, the month of March was, the middle of March, it started taking a dip. April was again a very low dip month. But in the month of May, June, as the government started, covering their tracks and, adding on to the and taking on the fight against COVID, with a lot of this DBT benefits and, and the economic benefits being flown down to the rural people, our business actually started taking off. So in terms of the back end, typically, as Ashish has said, that, back end operations is the strength. We have our central processing system center, CPC, wherein again we face the same kind of issues as to how to tackle such a huge volume, as the volumes actually grew multifold. I'll give you some statistics also later, but the volumes grew multifold. But at the back end, people are finding it difficult because of the work from home thing, and the CPC working at half the strength. So we had to give VPN access. We had to maintain, struggle with the security and safety of the systems, so that the process also keeps on going smoothly. But the backend security systems and all that safety systems, etc., also fully taken care of. So in fact, we saw that in our case, I think basically because of the model being 100% digital, even our life insurance is a 100% digital process. Or, for example, the AEPS system, which is the NPCI system, which we are doing to enable cash withdrawal from any bank, anywhere, any banking cash withdrawal. So that AEPS withdrawals, typically which happened for the DBT withdrawals, that really took off. In fact, we were not anticipating a 300 or a 400% rise over the earlier normal. So this has now become a normal for us. So, in a way, our operations and our business numbers both have taken off. I'll talk about some other aspects also, like how we took on marketing, distribution, and some new product additions, etc. So I'll talk about that also.
So you really have adopted what Winston Churchill recommends. You have not let it go waste. That's good. Yeah. That's good. Who has some other new perspective? Mahindra, you were saying something.
Yeah. Okay. So
please, you can finish and then I'll add. No problem.
Yeah. Thanks. I think the major changes that happened in our strategy was to reprioritize and redesign our processes to make it more digital first and online for our customers. So like Ashish said that, how physical is physical front end and back end is all digital. That is the focus that we started putting more on. And the very fact that our robotics, delivered 2x of the numbers savings that we did. And the very fact that we started looking at how video KYC can be enabled. So we were the first bank to go live with it, and all our online platforms is where we started focusing more on, whether it is chat bots or voice bots. And we could clearly see that now customers' behavior are changing, and that's why our strategy towards helping them digitally should also be, our priority. And in the entire operations were given remote accesses, so that while with appropriate definitely security provision, but they were given VPN accesses so that the work doesn't stop. And what we saw is a beautiful customer behavior towards the online channels multifold.
Right, correct. That has been the experience in almost every organization.
Yes.
You mentioned that robot productivity or usage doubled or something.
Yes.
Could you briefly expand on that? Is it productivity or just
number of hours? So what happened? So what happened is we measure it with the number of hours that we save in a particular process, whether in operations or whether whichever processes. And we could clearly see that we've doubled it in terms of the scalability. Or once COVID was seen as an opportunity and definitely the need of the hour, we started automating our processes to a level where we have now seen almost double the hours saved as compared to last year. Yeah.
What about human productivity? Is there any change in that once the COVID thing started? Once the lockdown
Absolutely.
started?
Yeah, absolutely. human productivity, we saw that a lot of people, especially in the being a bank in most of the urban areas, head offices were in the urban areas. Travel time was huge, so we could clearly see that the travel time became, individuals started using that time and made a balance between their travel time. That now that travel time is no more. So how do you balance between your work and your home? And we saw the productivity go up, and the very fact that there is no gap between two Zoom calls. If you were in office, you would
Yes.
actually spend time, moving from one room to the other. But here, you can just cut one call and then you're into the other call. So the efficiency, yes, we saw increase in efficiency.
Okay. Let's hear from Mahindra, and then Ashish wants to say something.
We've been, Fincare has always been a digital first bank. We've had all our onboarding through digital platforms for the customer. So I think COVID, yes. What is the impact? I would say in terms of operational impact, I would say moving from central to local and from local to doorstep. I would say that was the transition which happened. What I mean by saying central to local is there are certain things which used to happen centrally started happening locally because couriers were not working sometimes. And you had to give local level authorization to do certain things which were important to businesses. And from local to doorstep. See, we are a microfinance based company. We started our bigger base is microfinance, where typically the group walks into your branch for you to be able to do the disbursement to them. Although the onboarding is digital, but then you create that group mechanism. So what we had to actually do is to go to the doorstep to start doing disbursements. So we went back and said, let's go to the doorstep and help the customer, whoever was in need. So we never even stopped disbursements because as a bank, we were allowed to continue. We were allowed to do our normal operations. So I think going doorstep. So I would say central to local and local to doorstep is what technically was the transition that COVID brought in.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Ashish, you want to add something?
Yeah, so just on the point that Harish was talking about, I would break the human capital adjustment into two aspects. If I look at the technology and operations teams, I think, I'm a big proponent of work from home now.
Okay.
After the experience. Otherwise, I'm not such was never a big proponent of work from home. Primarily because, see, these are teams which can work where processes are very easily measurable. And their deliveries are not where they require any interaction with somebody on a minute-to-minute or day-to-day kind of a basis. Right? It's a set process, you need to execute that. But the other fallout of COVID that I see is that with this, all of us and, depending on your company's call, working the social interaction which is going out hurts teams which have to work across teams, like I would say one of my teams, which is the product team, right? That's the fulcrum, that's a design team, that's a thinking team, right? Over there, you need to have face-to-face interactions to make sure that your base is right. So that is one, there are no hard and fast rules, but I would say that if you need to, and being away from each other and just looking at screen, the social bonding between teams, which is so very important for organizations to grow and for leaders to grow out of them, is something I think people are now thinking about how to get people back in office, because that is one angle that has gone missing to a very, very large extent, I would say.
That's right. That's interesting. Anything that is a lot of innovation or creativity or art or whatever, the non-repetitive work, non-predefined work, I think you
absolutely
have more human interaction.
Absolutely.
Let me ask Mahesh, how has Blue Prism worked with its clients during this post-COVID? And let's take the new definition of COVID that Ashish described to us.
Absolutely. No, I think Blue Prism has been in some sense the center of the strategy. And I would say one of the things that resonates among all customers is that need for speed in some sense, right? To quickly adapt and, adapt to this change and manage the disruption, right? Across all functions, right? So we have, for example, few of our prospects who have not even taken up automation. As part of the COVID program, we actually gave them licenses as support to even onboard few of the processes, so that that initial pain points can be taken care of, right?
Okay.
So as a product, Blue Prism has been fundamentally designed to handle such disruptions and change. The reason why I'm saying that is that we are probably the first and probably the pioneer in having a centralized architecture where everything is delivered. This entire automation is delivered out of the data center in a completely secure fashion. I think Gusharan mentioned that, right? How do you access applications, etc., securely, right? So we have always been, having that as part of our core strategy in the product architecture itself. I'll give you an example. In Australia, for example, one of our customers in a bank, deferral requests were earlier only about 200 numbers pre-COVID, right? In terms of loan deferral or such requests. Once the COVID kicked in, it went up 250x. Okay, 250 times the current one. And they had to realign about 200 of their frontline staff to manage just the service requests, right? And as you can imagine, all the customers are in distress. So they have to answer to that, deferral request. Then we were called upon to onboard this process back. And within 2 weeks, we had 40 robots deployed and this entire process was automated. And, today as a steady state, we are able to run it with 7, even the same 250x volume. So this is an example of how nimble and how quickly businesses can, in some sense, just drag and drop and create a process in automation and help serve the customers.
Yeah, that's a tremendous achievement. A good example of something that really goes haywire when a black swan like this happens.
Absolutely.
Great. Let's move on to our next question. I want to take up what Haresh had mentioned about productivity. And then Mahesh has also mentioned the same thing from a different context. How are other bankers here looking at productivity, human productivity? Which kind of job profiles do you find productivity increase or managing productivity easier? Which kind of job profiles is managing productivity in these kind of times more difficult? Then how are you managing the difficult cases? How are you measuring? How are you managing? Maybe the business heads are managing or the team heads are managing, but at least in terms of ensuring that everything works in sync. Because let's say you have two departments interacting with each other. One is working at 3x and one is working at half x. Then it's not their problem. Perhaps it is somewhere it's your problem, right? Any thoughts on this kind of thing, productivity perspective? Yes, Ashish.
So I would look at it in a fashion that, whether it is COVID or pre-COVID, productivity measurement is a key matrix that you will drive with an HOD or at a senior management level, you will drive for every vertical. Mm-hmm. So to my mind, it is not that you have started doing this now. It is not that COVID gave you an opportunity. Finally, from a sales perspective, I look at it, and I'm sure Gushan will vouch for it, that it is finally the end number at the end of the month or the end of the week, whatever you're monitoring, a daily basis number, MIS that comes out, is the moment of truth for the sales team, right? Correct. Rest, everybody, to my mind, is in a very, very measurable kind of an environment, whether it be operations, technology. You have 1,000 types of timesheets you can come out with to measure technology, this thing. But the focus needs to be the end point. Are you getting it right the first time? What are the errors that you come out with, right? How many times does that code need to go into a rework? How many times do you need to redeploy before you say, all right, now the UAT is signed off and goes into production? And how many times do you face a production issue in the first 1 month? Mm-hmm. So there are no, I would say, COVID has not really, given you a new normal in terms of trying to measure things, but it is a mindset that has been changing, that because you don't have face-to-face interactions. As human beings, you see people working and you feel, oh, great, this guy is doing a good job. He's always on his desk. He's doing something which should be right? The fact as human beings that we don't see people in office and see them far away is no different from large organizations having offices pan-India or globally, and a global head sitting somewhere or a pan-India head sitting in X location and not being able to see face-to-face. So it's more a mindset change that I think at a middle management and a senior management level that you're going through, where you have to accept that your teams have to be measured with the end results that are coming out, and naturally put some intervention in the middle to give them, tweak people to say, all right, you have to do X. Let's take operations. X number of files did not go wrong. Reconciliation happened in time. End of day happened perfectly. Beginning of day happened perfectly. 500 times the maintenance, but no difference really. It's if you ask me, it's the mindset of acceptability that people sitting in their houses are also doing equivalent or more work than what you would have seen them doing right sitting there in front of you. Sorry, Manoj, you were saying something.
No, so I was just asking if you could give an example where there was very high productivity, where there was kind of productivity went down,
So
and then
I
you had to
would
do something about it.
So I put it this way. So we are a big propagand or now of RPA. We have ourselves gone into robotic process automation. We are the fifth largest, acquirer on APIs. We do about 2,500 crores a month. We do 3,000 crores of DMT transactions in a month. We do about 3,000 crores of micro ATM, which is we have about 65% market share. With these kind of volumes, we saw that it is not possible to have a linear operations team at the back end where you deploy more people to run operations. And hence we just went full on into automating or deploying, as Mahesh was saying, going into RPA processes, deploying bots to do work, which is mundane, routine, and repetitive and non-complex. As long as it meets 4 of these requirements, I would say just deploy a bot. You may take some time learning it. You may take some time deploying it because these are, it's easier to just make a comment and move away. But, deploying this, you go through your own sets of challenges. But I think that's the way forward. And that's what we found, that wherever our volumes have gone up over there, a back-end process being done manually will not keep pace beyond a point. It will not meet business aspirations. You will be forced to automate things and move forward. And today there are umpteen number of technologies available to do that. Back to you, Manoj.
Okay. So Gulshan, and at your organization, Indian Post Bank, did you face these kind of challenges? Did you have to really boost operations somewhere?
Yeah, so typically, you see, our operations, or I would say that the sales operations, wherever there is a physical interaction, with the customers and the users of the banking services. Typically, earlier we used to do a lot of these activities in the camp mode. So from the camp mode, it moved on to one-to-one or individual to individual mode. And otherwise, I would say that the time spent by the individuals, or the end users who are providing the service, that increased. But the overall productivity, or in the sense that number of customers served, the volumes being achieved, that did not actually come down. And in fact, I would again say that, being the entire process being digital, it did not, in fact, impact any of the operations or any of the services in any manner.
Okay.
Only thing I would say is that, for example, our call center, there we had to make a drastic change in terms of providing the access to people for work from home, and and the number of call center calls also went up. The service call and the requirements actually went up, and they had to increase the number. They had to quickly train them, and but they had also got to provide them the access, and desktops also had to be purchased. They were provided at their houses. And this entire process was efficiently handled by our, our service providers, which is Tata Communications, along with our team. They worked very closely together, and they handled this situation in a very efficient manner, I would say. So, in fact, the servicing did not suffer, but the number of people and the desktops and the VPN, everything had to be managed very, very quickly. And I think I would, really appreciate the fact that, people went out of their way, and many of the people, in fact, in our teams, they went out of the way to, maintain the service levels, to maintain, operations in the CPCs, in the call centers, as well as on the field. People, we actually started calling them Corona warriors. And just to motivate them that, these Corona warriors, they've done this, they've done that. We used to applaud them a lot, put a lot of these success stories and, human stories, voice of customers on the social media. So these kind of things, they actually I would say, helped us in maintaining the pace, as well as, increasing the pace and meeting up with demand.
Fantastic. In fact, I heard of plenty of hero kind of stories, people who have really gone out of the way, whether it's a banker, whether it's a service provider to a bank or a technology provider to the bank, especially during the earlier days where there was lots of restrictions, lots of fear. Even the police and transport and all that was not streamlined like it is now.
Right.
People have done
We had
really
an
well.
edge because our people being government employees, no, so अगर वो post office का वो गाड़ी जा रही है तो they would deliver medicines also, they would deliver so many of these essential things. Along with that, they would also set up camps for disbursing cash. So
Interesting.
for anybody who is in need, and that also help in a way.
Very
for our-
interesting. Just curious if you increased your fleet of vehicles also during
No,
this
no,
period?
we didn't increase.
Nice.
We didn't increase that. Probably
Yeah.
the number of rounds would have increased, or the frequency of the trips would have increased.
Yes, Mahinder. How did your bank respond? You gave one example about the lending camps. Any other
Yeah,
activities?
so I think as you rightly said, as a banker, we had to open the branches every day.
Yes.
So our physical offices had to be open, and we were not lucky to be a government organization as India Post. So we did face a lot of challenges. People at the ground found it very difficult to cross district borders. Life was not very easy, and it was not always that your people always stayed in the same district where they worked. Even if they were just bordering a little out, life was very, very difficult to come back and open
Yes.
branches. What luckily for us had happened, I think on the call center piece and on the other pieces, we started a little early. The nation shut down on the 25th of March. We shut down our corporate office on the 16th of March.
Oh,
So yeah,
okay.
so we did a quite probably I thought we were a little faster. So that helped us put the BCP in place a little faster. So we were able to get the desktop laptops working for the call center much earlier. We envisioned a lockdown, but we did not envision a lockdown this long. So we also brought in the chat bot. That's where we made use of the bot. We upped our WhatsApp bot to be able to, literally give statements to people. People could just download their bank statements from our WhatsApp bot or even from our chat bot. So we were able to, put a few things in place much before the lockdown started. And Corona Warriors, as Gurcharan said, is something we also had the same term. So in the initial days, yes, out of the 500 odd own banking outlets that we had, we were not able to open beyond 300. But a week, 2 weeks into the lockdown, and then we got nearly close to the 500 and odd that we had.
Okay.
And we always had customers who would walk in for emergency needs, as cash withdrawals. People would also actually come in for gold loans, and primarily would be vegetable vendors, would be vendors who needed money to buy stock. So we kind of helped most of these overcome the little money challenges that they had through non-digital mode. That is, the branch.
Okay, that's interesting. Mahesh, if I may ask you, in light of all this, how does the new measure of productivity, whether of people or of bots, or people assisted by bots or bots assisted by people, how does the management and the operations come up with more meaningful measures of productivity?
Yeah, I think good question, Manoj. I think productivity, I think it's the way we look at it in what lens, right? I mean, if I were to elevate the discussion to a little higher thing, it's all about, we fundamentally believe, and the way our founders envisioned the product by itself is that we believe in every organization, every employee has the potential to be an entrepreneur in that function, right?
Okay.
The reason why I'm saying that is that as organizations and as top management, when we have discussion, they have so much of trust, and in some sense, COVID actually has upped that trust element much more, because people are working from home, probably not under our control, etc. Right?
Yes.
So as organizations, what they're probably looking at, many of our customers are really looking at is, how can we give them that time and space for them to innovate and think out of the box within that function and contribute better and faster for the organization's growth, right? Now, for that, what you need to do is that, the first level or wave one, if you call it, is that move that mundane tasks away. That is one portion of it. And then, probably I'm just giving you an example. If it's in a contact center, right? There are a lot of contact center applications, which probably, unified desktops, etc., which will give you the right amount of information when the phone call lands up, right? But if we were to move that to a next level of even advising the next best action when a call lands based on sentiment analysis, etc., of a customer, that's when the true value really comes, and actually the person can really focus on managing that customer, right? And the systems and the process itself can be initiated by digital workers to by the time the call is finished, right? That's about delighting the customer. So I think productivity measurements is really, in some sense, we should look at the customer happiness. At some sense, that's the end point for all of us who are in business, right? So I think we should probably look at it more from that external angle, is my opinion.
Okay, that's great. Any other perspectives, gentlemen, on measuring productivity overall? Harish, what about at your end, Kotak?
So we have three measurements. One is definitely our say, which is a common measurement across the board, I would believe. Second is, and primary is customer experience. So we have NPS
Okay.
and as a measurement, and we do have measurements on the bots also. So how have the bots actually, service the customer and so on. And definitely risk mitigation is one of the criteria for the banks.
Yes.
So that's how much of, so once you give it to a bot or once you automate the solution, you're also eliminating or reducing the risk that you were running with a manual process. Yeah, so so these are three measurements that we focus on in terms of productivity for us.
Okay. Ashish, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, so what I was saying is that, I think COVID also created some opportunities, and the way we looked at it, that we onboard about 15 to 20,000 merchant points who are our customer service points at the bank. And in the last about month and a half, we've launched our video KYC. And practically about within the first 15, 20 days, we've started doing 1 to 2% of that onboarding on a daily basis through video KYC, which is totally faceless, right? It's non-face to face. Somebody sitting in Bombay, an onboarding team is onboarding somebody probably sitting in Kerala, somebody sitting in Ladakh. So, that's the level at which technology can take you. Keeping in line with non-face to face, we launched Iris on APS. We are in the pilot stage with the NPCI on facial recognition, so that APS transactions can be done without even a biometric. And today, there are 19.8% of APS transactions fail because the biometrics don't match, right? Because the biometrics undergo a change over a period of time.
Yes.
With Iris and facial recognition coming in, the facial recognition hopefully should be out in about month and a half, once the pilots are over the UID and NPCI. These two put together can straight away take APS success ratios up by 20%. That's a 19.8% failure rate, can straight away go away. Even if I say we achieve 50, 60% of that, that's a huge jump in successful transactions. So, I think like somebody said, Winston Churchill said, you don't let a good crisis go waste. So everybody, there is something that you will reinvent in your business model. You just need to keep looking at something different because the customer need is still very much there.
Yes.
And with the GDP coming back in the next 6 to 8 months is actually going to be a recovery phase, right? So if you've done the right things, you're going to participate in it fully then.
Correct. I can see everyone nodding and agreeing with you. So you're right. You're absolutely right about that. Let's move on to the point that, for example, Harish mentioned that you have to start looking at risk also as a part of this productivity and transformation. And one thing we have seen is that whenever something changes, it takes time for the changes to filter down into the employees and then into the customers and then into the customers who are remote and less literate and whatever else. And fraudsters typically end up taking advantage of any change, introduction of a new product, introduction of a new channel, introduction of some new government guideline, whatever it is. So as a part of this last 6 months of transformation, have you seen any changes in the fraud patterns, people taking advantages of the new systems, of the new digital processes? and finding loopholes in those, and then how are you overcoming those, or closing the doors for exploitation of any loophole? Of course there are fraud teams and all that, but overall as an organization, how do you do it? Yeah, Ashish, you wanted to say something?
So the way, any organization which has a large transaction base, and when I speak specifically in my context, as Fino Payment Bank, or I would say even India Post for that matter, where your transactions are of a very, very huge volume, there you have to be very, very up to mark with your fraud processes. Not that other organizations don't, but in a transaction-based organization, or where your major lines of income are transaction-based, the travel of money today in a world which is so interconnected, and India is really at the cutting edge of it. I think with NPCI has done a wonderful job. You have UIDAI, which has given you e-authorization, e-KYC, and NPCI, with IMPS and UPI and all the other rails that we have. I think it's fantastic. But it also brings the challenge that money can move real time within a jiffy, and it moves account to account. So your fraud management system, your EFRM, the rules that you build up need to be really, the monitoring levels have to be of the very next level. So what we did frankly was that we had anyway contracted for an FRM. I think we went hammer and tongs as a focus project to deploy the FRM.
Okay.
Because the transaction volumes were going through the roof. And when transactions, you have to cite patterns. Money is coming, is getting withdrawn within 30 seconds. Money is coming, getting withdrawn within 2 minutes. Money is coming in, jumping one account to another account within the bank. Money coming in, jumping from your bank to only X bank or X organization. So you got to keep picking up these patterns and then building up rules to stop those transactions on the fly, or build in rules to contain that risk, because this is always going to be a cat and mouse game, and a fraudster will always try and remain 2 steps ahead of you, and it's how fast you can respond and how agile you are to respond to that is what is. And as leaders, one has to keep realizing there is going to be this huge tussle between business and risk. Business always wants full freedom. There is no risk, and risk always wants that you put in those 20 rules. And this is all of it. So you have to have you just have to keep finding that middle path somewhere, which looks at customer centricity and allows business the freedom that it requires. Because banking, it's such a regulated environment, it can really put you at a lot of jeopardy if you don't follow the rules correctly.
Absolutely.
Back to you, Manoj.
Mahinder, what is it for a small finance bank where maybe the transactions is not such a huge thing? Maybe relations is the big thing, or something else is a big thing.
No, actually, transactional is pretty high here as well, as Ashish rightly mentioned. It's all the UPI and the IMPS. We do a lot of onboarding of our savings accounts through digital mode. That's the 101 savings account that we have. And we saw a big jump in the savings account acquisition during the lockdown period, much higher than what we used to normally see. Thankfully, we also had the video KYC thing started off immediately. So I would say, I would agree with Ashish that, the EFRMS system that we had to be strengthened, had to be kept at pace, so as to track the transactions down and track, work with multiple rules, so that you can, end of the day, even look at, blocking some kind of transactions where you see patterns which are more fraudulent. I think that's what we also did. So frankly, in terms of transactions, we did see a huge jump in transactions on the UPI. See, also remember one more thing, since we have a lot of Aadhaar linked accounts, a lot of DBT money moved in there. The Prime Minister had announced the 2,000 rupees transfers. So we saw big time APBS credits into the accounts. The support that the central government had given to the poor. So obviously there was an increase in transaction. And the EFRMS rules were strengthened so that we don't land up with too many fraudulent patterns.
But any study on what kind of frauds did increase during this period?
We've not seen a jump in pattern, at least as far as the cybercrime reports come into us, because we do get requests from the cybercrime sometimes to provide documents of clients. We've not seen too much of a jump during the COVID period.
Okay. Harish, what has been your experience? Yours is a much more broad-based bank.
Yeah.
Are there with multiple points of, people wanting to attack different
There
vectors.
would be. So,
What has been your bank's experience and
so
risk
our
management?
bank's experience has been that, like everybody's putting a EFRM, we already had a EFRM in place, which had the rule, and definitely they have to be strengthened from time to time because the modus operandi keep changing. And
Mhm.
like what Ashish said, it's a cat and mouse game. So
Correct.
somebody, wants to be ahead of you at all times. So that is I think one area that we had strengthened up. Second is a lot of technology investments in terms of how do you lock the SIM, or there are technologies available to actually identify if that's the customer for you or not. So those are something that we have deployed. And the very fact that we saw that overall, like the pattern remains the same. The pattern doesn't change that
Okay,
much,
hasn't changed.
hasn't changed that much. But yeah, from a
Which is good
fraud perspective,
actually, which
yeah,
is
but
good that it's under
from a
control.
perspective, we've got a lot of AIML techs, deep techs involved to see what type of transactions are happening and how they're working for us.
Okay. So apart from all the big players offering FRM solutions, has any of you worked with any kind of fintech or some startup to cover any particular aspect of fraud or risk?
On the fraud side, I would also like to say one more thing that we in our bank because our customers are much more vulnerable in terms because they are
Uh-huh.
more gullible, they are more rural based. So we had started witnessing a lot of these phishing kind of complaints or fraud
Okay.
complaints which were happening. So we actually ran a campaign, especially sending a lot of these SMSs. Do not share
Hmm.
your PIN code with everyone. Do not share your OTP with anyone. So like that. So we had kind of run a campaign, and that too in vernaculars. So we normally follow a 12 to 13 language system. So we sent out a lot of these messages in vernaculars and in English, Hindi, etc. And in order to prevent these frauds. So I think that after that,
Yes.
some of this has come down, but we saw a little bit of jump in these kind of frauds.
Right. That's a very good point actually, Gulshan. Yes, Ashish, you wanted to add something.
Yeah, so just adding to what Bushran said, customer education is a continuous process, and that's one aspect that the more you do, the lesser it is. If you ask me, and specifically, and you very rightly brought it out, in context of the kind of segment, at least that Fino Payment Bank or India Post would deal with, typically a segment returns from about 1.5 lakh, 2 lakhs
Yes.
to about 6,
Yes.
7 lakh rupees a year, kind of a conversation, right? But anecdotally, if I was to tell you, you would have heard of Jamtara, right? So every time you hear of Jamtara, and when Jamtara became famous, we put a curtailment that we will not open any saving accounts, or we will not give merchants in that area the permission to open saving accounts. Now
Okay.
you stop one place, and we suddenly found that law enforcement agencies, we have this WhatsApp group, and I'm sure all banks are part of it. So we suddenly found new places like Bharatpur popping up. So that the fraudster population has shifted 5 districts or 2 states away and moved to this thing. So you need to track the environment. Second aspect is that we started something called we used to do it earlier, but we took it to the next level. Every account that we open, there is a welcome calling done, and if you don't pick up your phone number for the first 1 week, then we put a credit freeze on that account and keep it, right? So that then the risk on that account goes down.
Yes.
And we set up a 24/7 call center process where somebody can call up a customer and say, identify himself or herself through a few sets of measures, and then the account will get automatically, kind of opened up. But now that's where, like I said, now if I put on my business hat, I would say this is not done by any bank. Why should this process be there? Why are you inconveniencing the customer? Because today, be it me or you, nobody likes to pick up a call center phone. The moment you come, you put it into a spam or something.
Yeah,
Correct. Right? So you're calling one of those similar numbers as a bank would reach out to its customer base. And added to that, the challenge that COVID brought in was call centers services went for a toss in the first at least 1 month. And you had mobile numbers of your customer call center executives calling up, which became, that's another challenge you faced. But these were the kind of things you had to grapple with, and you had to also keep ensuring that the business growth, or at least your business, was right there. You were right there in the middle of the customer, serving him. Because in our kind of business, you were actually there at the time of need of the customer. I would say AEPS, micro ATM, these are products which have really stood the test of time in these times by the volumes that have gone over, and primarily due to the government grants. But what it basically means is that, the processes that have been created and these products have really stood the test of time. One is this. Secondly, we came out with a product when we said that we gave an over-the-counter debit card. We came out with the Jan Bachat Khata, which can only work when you authenticate yourself against your UIDI fingerprints, not even the internal fingerprint that we capture. So that made it like, it's a foolproof. I mean, if as long as the UID fingerprints are not compromised, it's a perfect this thing. So we said a bank account which will only work on transactions which are biometrically authenticated on UIDI servers. So, you have to you reinvent something, come out with something new, to catch the imagination, to look at a particular segment that will require this product and take it up from there.
Okay, that's interesting. Good examples. Let me ask Mahesh if he has any other examples to share. Maybe some of your customers are doing something interesting that our participants here can leverage in some way.
Yeah,
or as an organization, you're doing something new to capture this.
Yeah, in fact, intelligent automation, has been central to a lot of these, fraud management in itself, right? See, if you really look at it, what fraud management system is a lot of an if-then scenario statements and workflows, and based on which, decisions are taken to understand if it's a fraudulent transaction or not, right? Which in some sense is core to RPA itself, right? Which is an if-then statement, and that's how, decisions are made. Now, what a lot of our customers have done is that they face two set of challenges. One, the variables and vectors of fraud are changing, right?
Yes.
And that keeps on, changing at every point in time. So that's a change that they have to manage with. Second is, when the volume of fraud increases, or, and even the skill of people to monitor those kind of frauds which are flagged out by the system, needs to be looked at. I mean, that skill is becoming a little rare now, and it's probably getting costlier as well, right? Okay. So, a lot of our customers are now looking at deep diving on even an AML and fraud-based, approach. They're deep diving and seeing whether machine learning tools, I think Haresh mentioned, a lot of tools are there where, AI and machine learning is used to look at patterns and suggest actions, right? And this is all tied to the RPA platform itself, so that this whole process sort of becomes, straight through in some sense, if you want to call it that way. And, reports are generated and, even suggested to the monitorer who's monitoring if it's a fraud or not, that the chances of fraud are this in terms of percentages, right? So these kind of, they're trying to marry quite a few of their systems with RPA to make it, make analysis quicker and reduce the false positives also.
Okay, interesting. Mahesh, you have something to ask, to inquire from?
No, I think
friends.
No, I just, I mean, I know all of them are in different, some of them have adopted or started adopting automation, right? And we always feel that there are three waves in automation. So I just wanted to hear their viewpoint as, some of them started automation from a task, personal productivity perspective, right? And then you moved on to, achieving process automation by itself. But really have, how much has been the entire transformation, please, have the new business models been developed? I think that's an interesting viewpoint if you all have, which you could share, or maybe we can share offline as well. But, that's a thought process that's there in my mind, because each of the Indian customers that I see are in different waves, and most of them are still in the first wave or second wave, I would say.
Okay, any thoughts on this? Different waves of automation? And
just to add to his
question, do you try to standardize the technology for automation across the organization, or do you let different use cases use, different flavors of technologies? What works for you?
So I would, respond, Mahesh. I would say, it'll actually depend on philosophy. Like for a bank of our nature, who's about close to about 3 years old now, you carry no legacy. So as you carry no legacy, it depends upon what was the ethos that you laid down as your founding principles. For Fino, we laid down the founding principles as that, there will be no piece of paper in any process. There will be no, from a customer standpoint, or from a merchant standpoint. So we put the customer and the merchant in the center, the merchant being the CSP, right? Because we said, today we have about 3 lakh merchant points and adding about 15, 20,000 a month kind of a number. So, with that, when you put that philosophy around, then you realize that yes, and you challenge and you say that there will be no piece of paper means there will be no piece of paper. So then everybody works around with that principle to say that when I cannot collect a single piece of paper from the customer, how do I build my process on those principles? And believe me, it actually just falls in place. Because then you look at a document management system, you look at workflow management systems, and you look at integration with each other, and you build architectures or frameworks rather than trying to build piecemeal kitchen sink applications to say it takes care of this problem, it takes care of this solution, I can build in 10 days, 20 days. You look at frameworks to say that this framework, tomorrow, if I get 20 other things, it'll just fit into this framework and one system is dovetailed. You pick up an enterprise service bus, you pick up middleware, so that, if you work with that philosophy, then, frankly, I would rather say, rather than the stack of applications or the tech stack, I would say that what is the philosophy underlying the doing and what is the architecture you're trying to build up. If it is an all-encompassing architecture, your growth will be much either. Otherwise, at some point, your architecture will become the limiting factor in your technology growth for your organization.
Absolutely.
Very interesting.
Very great viewpoint on that, Ashish, right? I mean, it relates very well to our ethos as well.
Okay. Let me put the same thing to Harish. I mean, yours, again, I keep saying, being a large organization and with a longer history than the others, is your architecture also standardizing towards this paperless or some other?
I think I just wanted to add one bit of it, which is the microservices architecture, which is an important shift from legacy systems, and how do you connect the entire framework to microservices and APIs.
Oh,
so
that will become the unifying architecture for
architecture, along with definitely the enterprise and the middleware and so on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that you think will okay. I understand the benefits of micro architecture.
Yeah.
Gulsharan, you were
Thanks, Gulsharan. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So what I was saying was that typically we had envisaged our systems about 3 years back, and we had run an RFP. So the process of selection was through an RFP, and this systems integrator, we call him, which is DXC Technologies. He was to bring in all kinds of vendors, and on the back end he had to think of all kinds of vendors, and our requirements were given almost 2.5, 3 years back. At that point of time, we had not envisaged these kind of requirements and, these kind of AIMLs, etc., and, fraud risk management kind of, advanced tools, etc., technologies, etc. So, currently now, if we have to add on to all of these, the existing architecture or the existing, technology that we have, kind of got into, then it again means incurring extra cost and probably getting a new vendor or a new fintech into our systems or onboarding that particular entity, and that is a very, very long drawn process, and therefore I think we are not getting currently into that advanced technology. But yes, currently it is serving our purpose, and from whatever the rules, ERFM rules, etc., and the benchmarks and measures that we are taking care of, it is currently taking care of all kind of fraud management, etc.
Okay. And Mahendra, if I ask you, what has been the technology architecture roadmap? Any changes? Any new additions? If you could unmute, please, Mahendra.
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah. As I told you, we've been digital first. We have a full-fledged digital development team in-house. We don't outsource our digital development at all.
Okay.
We build the team in-house. We have a very large team in-house to take care of digital developments. Obviously, our core IT partner continues to be the core banking system, but through a lot of API calls, we ensure that most of the onboarding, most of the servicing is through multiple digital platforms. So that's one. Second, we did embark on our RPA journey sometime during the beginning of this year. As Mahesh rightly said, we are still in RPA 1. I think you learn with RPA1 how to go to RPA2. We've taken the more commonly used processes of reconciliation, ATM balancing, and all that into RPA1, which are the most common, tried and tested, easy processes to move to RPA.
Okay.
And we are now obviously in RPA2. We are in stage of RPA2. That's what we are now debating in terms of moving GST, invoice processing, a lot of other things into RPA. So that's where we stand.
What do you see as some of the major changes that this crisis, COVID crisis, what is the benefit you're going to get out of this in 2021 once kind of the economy kind of starts settling down?
So,
in terms of business, in terms of operations?
So I would say, COVID or no COVID, I think the vision has been very clear that, we should be, a digital first bank. We should be able to give the customer the convenience, the experience that, a new age bank can give. I think that positioning or that vision has been very clear.
Okay.
COVID has probably expedited a few things. I would say that's the only role that COVID would have played. Like, we had an IVR system, which was not as up to the mark. COVID probably, moved that a little faster at speed. We brought in a lot of services into our WhatsApp bot or our chat bot, which is today live. I would only say that COVID only speeded up, or, rather, gave a little bit of a tailwind, I would say, to the overall approach. But the vision's been very clear that, be digital first, try and do anything and everything digital with a good customer experience.
But in terms of products also, any change?
Well, we've been we've actually been a 60, 70, 80% microfinance kind of a company, and obviously we have the other secured products like loan against property and gold. We haven't brought in any new product at this point in time. We've stayed with our earlier basket, like the pre-COVID. We will surely come up with some digital lending products. That's something which is there on the anvil. When we will probably be exploring many of those in the times to come. That's what I could say.
Okay. Got it. Understood. Thanks. Gulshan, what would you like to say as your plan, as you're thinking for 2021?
Yeah. So, I would say that we are, fairly, doing fairly well. If we compare ourselves with the previous year, and this year has been, fairly good in terms of our revenues and in terms of our business numbers. And what we envisage is that, next year is going to be even better. And the pace that we have taken off, in fact, the new products that we've brought out, in fact, we recently just now launched the product like a digital life certificate, Jeevan Pramaan, in collaboration with NIC. We are just going to launch in a week's time SELC, which is a child enrollment light client for UIDAI, which will be taken over to all these remote corners of the country, to enroll the newborn children below 5 years. So on Aadhaar. So those kind of things. PMJJBY, Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, that has been launched now on 100% digital process, which is going to take only 2 minutes, hardly 2 minutes to, buy a policy of 2 lakhs as promoted by the Prime Minister. So these kind of products that we've launched and we are in the process of launching, like, for example, general insurance, we are launching very soon in a month's time. So these are the things which are really going to give us a lot of, lift. And I think hopefully, touch wood, the numbers are definitely going to look up and the business is looking promising.
That's interesting. The examples you've given are very interesting. It's good to see that, of course, being a hinterland-based bank, the opportunities are really huge for India Post Bank. That's true. Let's come to Harish. Harish, I'll modify the question slightly for you. The transition from 2020 to 2021, how is that going to be the transition from the earlier years, 19 to 20, 18 to 19? Do you see some change happening?
Absolutely.
In the current year's transition?
Absolutely. When we started, or when transformation team was formed, we used to have this saying, may the tribe increase, may the set of people who think digital increase. But today, it is all digital. So the speed at which, Amazon or say, Google or, the other competitions have changed the behavior of customers, it has also changed the behavior of our internal operations or
Mhm.
internal stakeholders. So the speed of execution will just fasten. It will
Okay.
just scale up, and
Okay.
that is the biggest difference which will happen in 2021. Because with technology changing, with AI ML changing, expectations to ramp up, scale up digital at all touch points, internally or externally, is the challenge that will be there.
In fact, the country, both the banks, the financial institutions, and the customers, they've in sync gone ahead with this adopting the digital transformation. So in that sense, it's a win-win for both. They're complementing
Absolutely.
each other beautifully, thanks to the so-called crisis. Ashish, what is your thinking on 2021? What kind of changes do you see internally in
So I would
operations?
say from a business standpoint, I think we are in a good spot. We turned profitable last quarter of last financial year and continue to maintain so in spite of COVID being there, and in fact it grew. So from that
Uh-huh.
standpoint, I think I'm very thankful to the entire team of where we are all doing what it takes to be done. Now that's on the business side, which I think if the economy recovers, banks are always in the center of the economy. And if you got your act right,
Mm.
there's no reason why you should not participate in that growth.
Mhm.
And hopefully things will only get better, right? COVID has to recede. If not today, it'll recede tomorrow.
Correct.
So that's one side of it, which I look at it. From a segment of population that is our core, I would say there is an aspirational population and there is a population that looks forward to government grants. So you've got to ride the spectrum on both sides, be ready for both. We've always prided ourselves by saying, like Tata Steel says, we also make steel. We say we also do banking because we believe we are a fintech which does banking. So as long as you have that as your mantra, and staying with the centerpiece of this discussion, I would say that challenge your operations team to say anything that can be done self-help will not be done through an assisted medium, including a call center. And put up digital matrices to say, we run a digitalization plan internally, we measure and say, how much of the transaction that my customer or my merchant, and a merchant is a customer for me, a CSP point, right? Am I closing for him digitally where he or she has come digitally on her own and closed that transaction? Whether it be a query, whether it be a pending transaction, whether it be anything. You set this thing to say X percentage of my processes will be on RPA, will be run on bots, and X percentage of the operations team will be moved into a sales team kind of a function. You set that, and I can assure you that it will happen without a doubt. Because if you don't, you are going to be, at some point, you're going to find that this is going to be an impediment to growth. Because large volumes cannot be handled where people are calling up call centers. Because very soon you're going to find the call center transaction is expensive from a servicing point of view. So it is better to be ahead of the curve on that side. Back to you, Manoj.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, listening to all of you, I'm pretty sure that in the global rankings for digital penetration and digital processes and digital customer interfaces, India is going to move quite a few ranks. I don't know what rank it is now. Let's say a round number, let's say it's 50th. They'll probably come to 40th or something in 6 to 12 months' time with the kind of transformations that are happening and the customer acceptance of all the kind of transformations. Mahesh, would you like to have the last word on what you see as the digital transformation in the financial sector?
Yeah, I mean, from hearing from all the stalwarts, I think I would say, all of them, relate to that point. I don't know if you all have heard of the term called murmuring of birds, right? I mean, if you see murmuring of birds, it's that wonderful, thousands of birds in the sky, which takes shape the way it goes, right? And if they identify a threat, some other person on the other side takes the lead and shifts to the other side, right? The reason why I'm doing that as an analogy is that, organizations today, with the fintechs, you have probably the Googles coming at the banks, different insurtechs coming. So it's all about creating that nimble organization which can compete and move in different directions but still, are flocked together to achieve something, right? So I think, we believe that, and that's core to our belief also, that, RPA and intelligent automation platform becomes that binding invisible force between those birds and between the departments, which will help you take through competition and to a much bigger flock, so to say. So that's all my closing comments, and I wish all of you well, and Godspeed to you in business.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good analogy about the flock of birds. And physically, it's actually a beautiful sight when you've seen them flying in formation. Of course, you see that on a smaller scale when the Air Force flies its planes, but when the nature does it with thousands and tens of thousands of birds, it's really amazing. So, in fact, there's a lot to, just to my final thought, there's a lot to learn from nature. However advanced we become, there are so many things, brilliant things that nature has done. And there's a term for that now, biomimicry. It's been around for a while. So you can learn a lot how nature does things and adopt that in our society, in our business, in our different parts of life. So great. It's been a great discussion. In this 1 hour, we have covered quite a few points and got variety of examples. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your valuable contribution in this discussion. I wish you well for the year ahead, for you, for your family, for your office family, and for your home family. And we can be in touch again sometime in the future, find some other interesting topic to discuss. Thank you all very, very much.